Some folks have a strange idea of entertainment.
Hi, I'm Alex Maynard.
I'm Will Lastly.
And we are the Blood Brothers.
No relation.
And today, if you can't tell by what is on the table, we are talking about quite possibly my two most favorite things in the world combined into one. We are talking about horror in the world of professional wrestling.
We are indeed. And what a perfect episode to unveil one of our newest set pieces.
Yes, this is a mask, a mask from They Live, featuring the late great Hot Rod Roddy Piper.
Which I think that movie is probably, I think honestly, the undisputed GOAT of horror movies starring wrestlers. I mean,
you didn't think Santa's Sleigh was better?
Santa's Sleigh is great.
You didn't think See No Evil was better?
Okay, that one maybe.
Without a doubt, I agree. They Live is the undisputed king when having a professional wrestler in the lead role for a horror film.
Yeah, because what we're talking about, and again, Alex is the one who knows more about wrestling than I do. What we're talking about is not only horror movies that starred wrestlers, but wrestlers and wrestling arcs that involve horror themes.
That's right, because very strangely, even diving into research for this particular subject, these two worlds intertwine very, very much.
They do.
And I guess we'll just go ahead and get right into it. The very first guy I think of is The Undertaker.
The Undertaker. I think almost everyone has at least heard of The Undertaker. My dad followed professional wrestling in like the 80s with him and his college buddies, and so they loved like the Four Horsemen. I think Ric Flair was my dad's favorite.
Woo!
So when I showed him They Live, he already knew Roddy and was like, oh hell yeah, this is gonna be great. But he had at least heard of The Undertaker, because I guess The Undertaker got started
1990.
In 1990. Okay, so as he was sort of not rejecting it, but just I guess kind of drifting out of that, The Undertaker was known. So even when I told him this is what we're doing, he was like, oh, okay, so like Undertaker.
Yes. I mean, his nickname is The Dead Man.
Right.
And that's his whole gimmick is, he's a supernatural dead man who has supernatural abilities. And, when I was broaching you about this for a subject, I think of the storyline between him and his kayfabe brother Kane.
Right.
Who is Glenn Jacobs, and if you don't know who Glenn Jacobs is, he is the mayor of Knox County here in Tennessee.
He is indeed.
He has come a long way.
Yeah.
But
I guess he and Jesse Ventura both decided to get involved in politics.
But I just find this storyline fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
It was around 1997, and Undertaker's former manager, Paul Bearer, is revealing secrets about The Undertaker's past, and it's revealed that his brother Kane is alive. Yeah. And this is where like some of the horror comes in. Yeah. It's not just
because what was the origin? Was it that he burned down his his house with his family inside?
The origin is that Undertaker burned down the funeral home that their family worked at, and Kane was in it, and Kane was severely burned. And when Kane debuted, he, long red and black gear with the red and black mask, long hair. Kane, when he first debuted, was basically Michael Myers.
Yeah, he was had visually the Leatherface aesthetic, but with the sort of Michael Myers physicality, and
he even did the
head tilt. Yeah.
The silent giant who's just gonna massacre everyone in his way. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And Kane in general is another great character in the world of wrestling that blends into horror, because even after he was done with The Undertaker, and as many times as they've gone back and revisited that, Kane has kidnapped multiple people.
Right.
He has burned multiple people.
Yeah.
And he even electrocuted a man's testicles.
Right. I mean, who hasn't? But
Will, what do you do at night? Don't answer. I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
Was during the date?
I don't want to know! Damn, man. But usually with horror in wrestling, it always seems to go down a more mythical / gothic route.
Yeah.
Especially in the Attitude Era. Undertaker was as gothic as you could get. I mean, he ended up leading his own cult called Ministry of Darkness.
Yeah, and like the lighting when he would enter is very like heavy blue lighting and
heavy blue, a little bit of purple.
Yeah, a lot of mist. Like it's definitely it definitely has that sort of, old dark castle aesthetic to it.
And he even had a promo, which is a promo in the world of wrestling is just your talking or segment where he basically rises from the dead like Frankenstein.
Yeah.
The stage is lifting him up. He gets struck by lightning, and then he sits up like Michael Myers does.
Yeah.
And it's so great. And horror and wrestling, if it's not supernatural, because you can't really do slasher or murder. I mean, you could, it just wouldn't be done well.
Right, because like you can't bring a machete into the ring, and if you brought in a fake one, it would look stupid.
Yes, and the one thing that I think they do well from time to time is cults.
Yeah.
Especially in today's wrestling, I would say about almost 10 years ago now, the Wyatt family debuted.
Yeah.
And they had those weird vignettes I showed you with it was in the South and it's a cult leader.
Yeah.
And even though he got supernatural too, I always thought his earliest stuff when he was just a charismatic cult leader was when he was at his best.
Yeah. Now, were they the ones that did the "let me in" thing? Okay.
Eventually, Bray Wyatt, he was floundering.
Okay.
And he had to reinvent himself, and he comes back as this Mr. Rogers type.
Yeah, you showed me this promo.
It was so creepy.
Yeah.
Even when I first watched it, I wasn't necessarily a fan.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, oh, is this really what they're doing? But the more I kept watching, the more unsettling it got. And at the end of the vignette, he's just, and remember my fireflies, all you have to do is let me in. And every vignette would end with him saying that, and each vignette after that would just get darker and darker. He takes a chainsaw to a portrait of his old self.
Yeah.
He draws a painting of what he feels inside, and all he drew was like fire.
Yeah.
It just got more and more disturbing, and that all led to the reveal of the Fiend, which is even though he is,
which has a connection to a horror legend.
Bray Wyatt is a horror guy.
Yeah,
and
you can tell.
The mask itself was Bray Wyatt did have input going into the mask, but it was ultimately created by Tom fucking Savini, who is a fucking legend.
Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead,
Friday the 13th,
Creep Show, what was it, The Prowler, was that him?
Yes.
Which I honestly think is very underrated.
Very underrated. I'd never heard of that one, and then the first time I watched it, I was just thinking, how come I haven't heard of this?
Yeah, and he actually was originally going to be doing the effects for the original Night of the Living Dead, but he was in Vietnam.
Oh.
So...
that kind of poses a problem.
Yeah, but, obviously it lets you know, so this guy has seen some real horror.
And what a way to recreate a lot of that.
Yeah.
And
you got to wonder how
fantastic job.
Yeah, you got to wonder how much of his work is based on, real things he's seen.
Well, I remember watching a documentary called Going to Pieces, and it's about the slasher genre, which
you let me borrow, and I still need to watch it.
You still haven't watched it?
Man, I got shit to do.
God damn, you're a disappointment.
Always have been, always will be.
But in the documentary, Tom Savini, he talks about his Vietnam experience.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, briefly, and he mentions how he saw this dead body with missing limbs, and one of the things he thought about was, man, how do I recreate this?
Yeah.
And in one of his talking head segments, he explains that there is a lot of darkness to this art.
Oh, of course.
Which there really is.
Would have to be.
And there's a lot of, when you portray a horror type character in wrestling, I can't speak from experience with it, but I imagine you have to go to a dark place to get there.
Depending on the character,
Yes.
certainly.
And not only are these, wrestling characters, inspired by horror, they sometimes just flat out take from horror. If you look up one of Bray Wyatt's first promos back when he was in developmental in FCW, the original idea was that he was a Max Cady type of character.
From Cape Fear.
From Cape Fear. And if you go back and you watch his promo,
especially the remake that Scorsese did, which is practically a horror movie.
It might as well be.
If
you look up that promo, he takes certain lines that Robert De Niro's character Max Cady says in the movie about how he was illiterate. He didn't start to read until he went to jail. That's straight up from Cape Fear. And if I can take this to one of Bray Wyatt's disciples, the late great Brody Lee, rest in peace, he passed away too soon.
As do many wrestlers.
When he debuted in All Elite Wrestling, he, of course, was leading a cult called the Dark Order.
Right.
And in his first promo, straight up, a lot of his lines is taken from Negan's speech from The Walking Dead.
Oh, okay.
If you're a fan of The Walking Dead, look up Brody Lee's first promo, and you will see that a lot of his stuff is borrowed from The Walking Dead, or at least for just that promo.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of like how in a lot of horror movies, people do maybe just slight variations of speeches from real-life psychos. Like Otis Driftwood in House of a Thousand Corpses, the speech he's giving to the cheerleaders is really just a very light reworking of one of Charles Manson's big testimonies. And there's actually also a lot of similarities to some of Charles Manson's rants in Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. Just with the way he's talking about society, what they do to our minds, what they try to tell us to, like, it's straight up Charles Manson. And so it's almost like the next logical step for people who, play these over-the-top characters on stage in the ring to then borrow from horror movie characters. It's kind of just passing the torch.
Now, tying into more real-life horror, now this wrestler was not a horror-type wrestler, but he was inspired by Richard Kuklinski, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Probably like one of the, arguably the most popular wrestler of all time. Before he was Stone Cold Steve Austin, he was called the Ringmaster. And when he was repackaged and they're trying to figure out what to do with them, he was watching an HBO special over Richard Kuklinski, who was a hitman for the mob, nicknamed the Iceman.
There's a movie starring Michael Shannon called The Iceman that I highly recommend. It's phenomenal, and is straight up terrifying because Michael Shannon.
But Stone Cold, or Steve Austin, he's watching the special, and he's stated in many interviews that this kind of he could feel something from it. Like he could feel the gears turning, that he has something with this.
He immediately saw potential.
Yes, and if you go back and you watch some early vignettes of when he first turned into Stone Cold Steve Austin, you can kind of see in his mannerisms and his promos that he, very cold, very calculated, very, very much blank in the face.
Yeah.
Obviously, that evolved into something much greater, but the original idea came from Richard Kuklinski.
Right.
And if we could, to tie this into one of your favorite genres, horror comedy.
Right. Yeah.
In the mid-2000s, we had the Boogeyman.
Yes.
WWE does not do comedy very well.
No.
But when they get it right, man, is it hilarious.
When it's like camp horror, I mean, they know exactly what they're doing.
And
because they're coming at it from a horror angle and then saying, let's add some silliness to it.
Which the Boogeyman character is just nothing but pure silliness. I mean,
100%.
His catchphrase, I'm the Boogeyman, and I'm coming to get you.
Yeah,
Like,
it's very sequels Freddy Krueger.
Yes.
But in a much better setting.
This guy ate real life
It's
worms
just like eat real worms
on live television, and then he would feed those worms to his defeated opponent. It was so gross. And even anytime he got into an angle with another wrestler,
Yeah.
the Boogeyman was the good guy.
Right.
So he's chasing off these dastardly heels. Heel is bad guy.
Yeah.
And
you get heel and babyface,
heel
right?
and babyface. Heels are bad guys. Baby faces are good guys.
Yeah.
But he would, be chasing the heels all over the building.
Yeah.
Red light and smoke coming up, and the heels are just freaking out because you never know where he's gonna be.
Yeah, because he'll like jump down from the ceiling or something like that.
Or pop out from under the ring.
Right.
And even when he walks to the ring, he carries this old-fashioned clock that he smashes over his head.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous.
It's very much out of a out of a Sam Raimi type horror or or Peter Jackson or hell even something like Creepshow, where it's like this is a ridiculous character that is doing things that would ordinarily be sadistic, but the character is so crazy that you can't help but giggle sometimes.
Now, there was a segment in WCW,
Yeah.
World Championship Wrestling. It went out of business in 2001. There was a promo between Rick Steiner and on the Titantron, I kid you not, Chucky.
Yes, we talked about this
Yes.
in the Child's Play episode.
That's right.
As we talked about the how they advertised from the get-go that Bride of Chucky was going to be much more of a horror comedy. And yeah, that was one of the things they did. Because they also did something similar with Freddy vs. Jason, where they did like the press conference.
Oh, yeah, they did a weigh-in.
Yeah, a weigh-in, yeah.
Which is awesome.
Right. And I think Freddy vs. Jason is a little better than Bride of Chucky, but
and also horror monsters.
Yeah.
If you think of vampires,
Yeah.
wrestling has tried to do vampire characters. There's probably only one exception that was somewhat decent. And before I get to that one, I'm just going to name one that was really, really bad.
Yeah.
It was in WWE's reboot of ECW. A guy named Kevin Thorne, who just felt Queen of the Damned, but way after that movie had passed.
Like, it was like, this feels like... This... It just felt very 90s, or...
It just... You could tell they were trying to be edgy, but it just...
one of those...
No one was buying into it.
Yeah.
I mean, when ECW relaunched under the WWE umbrella, they had the Sandman wrestle the zombie. Guy in like early Day of the Dead zombie makeup, walking to the ring, and the Sandman massacres him with a kendo stick. But it's like no one wants to see that.
Yeah, like Undertaker, I feel like has that, not straight up zombie, but it's very Frankenstein.
Yes,
and I feel like that is a way of doing it in a way that works for the medium.
But Mark Calloway, the performer,
Yeah.
is so good that no one else could have done that and make it last for
Got it.
for as
Okay.
long as they did.
Okay.
I if you put anyone else as the Undertaker, it's not a legend the way it is today. 'Cause
Right.
that's just how good Mark Calloway was with that
Yeah,
character. And
yeah.
he constantly gave the Undertaker deaths because as much as wrestling fans, as much as we love the wrestling, we love the characters and the storylines.
The spectacle is such a big part of it.
And the wrestlers themselves, as characters, have to pull us in to make us care. And it's hard to care about a man who is dead. So the fact that he's able to turn what could have been a very goofy, corny gimmick into, you know,
something that lasted
for over 30 years is astonishing.
Absolutely.
And anyway, back to vampires.
Yeah.
There's one group or a trio back from the Attitude Era that did vampires well. And that was
you showed me
the
this.
Brood.
The Brood. It was very Lost Boys.
Very Lost Boys with Gangrel as the leader and then Edge and Christian. And, you know, they wore the...
Vampire named Christian. That's kind of funny.
They wore the, if you think Interview with the Vampire, those like long white shirts.
Yeah.
They were wearing those. They would literally rise from underneath the stage, and the stage that they were coming out of, it was like encircled in flames.
Yeah, okay.
And then they would walk to the ring. Gangrel's holding like this weird goblet with red liquid in
blood,
it. It's supposed to be blood. He would always get on the steps, drink it, and then spit it into the crowd.
Yeah.
Couldn't get away with that these days, you know, thanks to COVID.
Yeah. Just corn syrup. Warm, blood-flavored corn syrup.
This motherfucker's dead.
That's another movie we fucking love.
Tropic Thunder. You know, Dead Meat, outside of the kill count, he kind of does this interview segment called What's Your Favorite Scary Movie?
Yeah.
And he's interviewing wrestlers.
Yeah.
And I think that's just amazing to me that these two worlds, you know, they do oddly coincide.
Yeah.
And...
Because James and his wife are big wrestling fans as well.
Yes. And it's, it's just like...
As was John Carpenter. He's alive. Why did I say was?
It's, fans of wrestling and fans of horror are both extremely hardcore.
Yeah.
They are literally the best and worst things about it.
Right.
Because we're never satisfied. We always wanted something different. We always want to see something different.
Yeah.
And I just think...
But we're also loyal.
Yes, but we're loyal damn near to a fault because we've put up with a lot of terrible things in both worlds for me.
Right.
But it's just amazing to me how these two completely different things on paper are very, very similar. You know, I'm talking about old school monsters. Braun Strowman from the late 20-teens. Again, ironically, he was one of Bray Wyatt. He was known as the black sheep of the Wyatt family when he first debuted. And after he got away from Bray Wyatt and started doing his own thing, think King Kong. Because this guy was destroying everything on a weekly basis.
Oh my god.
He smashed Roman Reigns, and when they put him in an ambulance, he flips over the ambulance. And fans cheered it. I mean, fans really didn't like Roman Reigns at that point. And just seeing Braun Strowman lift an ambulance was just fucking awesome.
It's amazing.
He has pulled down parts of the stage. He has broken the ring. It's just he was like a modern day King Kong, and you know he was a heel, but fans got so behind him they had to turn him babyface. Right. And I think with the Braun Strowman character, depending on what you're wanting to do with it, it could work either way. Yeah. You know, we talk about horror comedy and the Boogeyman. Yeah. Kane has been babyface and heel. Yeah. And he could do horror comedy.
Oh yeah.
Because when he in 2012 he teamed up with Daniel Bryan to form Team Hell No, and they would go to
I was going to say, was this the anger management sketch you showed me?
Yes.
This was great.
And Kane is basically giving a rundown on all the terrible things he has done.
Right.
In just the most comedic fashion.
It's so deadpan. It's just...
And they're supposed to draw a picture of their feelings, and he left his blank, and then he throws it away, and he does his thing with his arms where flames come out. And everyone is so terrified. Yeah. And he sits back down, and then Daniel Bryan just... Teacher's pet. That is horror comedy.
It is. It is. It's... They... You know, you have to... You have to commit. In order for horror comedy to work, everyone has to be as committed as possible. And that, to me, is why something like, you know... My favorite horror movie of all time is Evil Dead 2. And everyone is so committed, and you know, everyone is just so all in that the intensity in the face of the ridiculousness is a big part of what makes it so great. And I think that's exactly what Kane did there, was the fact that he just played it so deadpan, so straight-faced, just, you know, again, we've talked about one of my all-time favorites is Creepshow, and what makes that movie work so well is everyone is taking it very seriously. Everyone is playing their character totally seriously, but what's going on is pretty silly. You know, a lot of times, and it's, you know, the presentation is very over the top, and that's what makes it work.
And speaking of Kane, I feel like this is a great segue into when wrestlers have starred in horror movies. Why don't we just talk about the worst of the three we're going to talk about?
Yeah, because we watched three in particular because there was one we had both seen, one only I had seen, and one only you had seen.
That's right.
The one only you had seen was a movie called See No Evil.
Yes.
That stars Kane, Glenn Jacobs, and
which it's a slasher film from the mid-2000s. It's got the Saw editing to it.
That should tell you everything you need to know about this movie.
Gross, gory, nasty.
But, like, without any sense of... It was almost like it was all of that, but also completely toothless.
Yes.
It was like, it really was all bark and no bite. It was just throwing edginess at you without actually having a real edge.
If this movie didn't have Kane, no one would have heard of this.
No.
And it's not just because WWE has a lot of money to do their own movie studio, but Kane was the selling point of this movie.
He was.
And basically
because he would make a great slasher villain.
He really would. If you see the way he portrays his character on television when he's being a psychotic heel is some of the most disturbing stuff you could see in wrestling.
Yeah.
And to see that onto the big screen for film, it's so bad. But damn, I wish I could have got more out of it, but at the same time, the whole time I was watching it, I was just, yeah, Kane, do your thing. Choke slam that son of a bitch.
Yeah.
This movie sucks.
Yeah, it is not good.
We get this asshole character who's supposed to be the asshole, who we all want to see die, and he doesn't fucking die.
And they try to give him this arc where it's like he sort of learns to be the good guy, but he doesn't change enough for it to... Because it's not like he suffered... It's not like his change was the result of him getting comeuppance.
He got pushed into a mirror. That was the closest thing he got to comeuppance.
It's not like he went to hell and back and was changed for the better. It was just... He kind of gradually, grew a conscience. And
you see the so-called twist coming from miles away.
Yeah.
The caretaker is Kane's mom. I'm sorry. I know the character's name is Jacob Goodnight. It's Kane. It's
literally Kane. And also Jacob Goodnight... Really, like, I know this was before the Bye-Bye Man was a thing, but come on, that's just as silly as the Bye-Bye Man.
I'll say this. What I liked about the movie
It might not be as bad a movie as The Bye-Bye Man, but it's not good.
What I liked about it, ironically, really has nothing to do with the movie. It's the commentary. If you watch it, if you get the DVD and you watch it with commentary, Kane and I believe the director, do commentary, and Kane is in character as Kane.
Yeah.
Rather than being Glenn Jacobs, he's Kane.
Yeah.
And he talks about how there was one actor in particular who he couldn't wait to kill, and when he finally kills him in the commentary, Kane's just, yes!
Which, also taking it back to, we mentioned Tropic Thunder earlier, it reminds me of, there's a joke in Tropic Thunder where Robert Downey Jr., whose character is a method actor, and people are trying to say, dude, we're not even filming, you can drop character, and he says, man, I don't drop character till I've done the DVD commentary. And the DVD commentary for Tropic Thunder, Robert Downey Jr. is doing it as that character.
And during production of the movie, they would shoot like behind the scenes stuff of, Glenn Jacobs being Kane.
Yeah.
I remember there was they
almost like the actor was Kane, not Glenn Jacobs.
Yes, and they had called cut, but Kane was still violently attacking the actor, and everyone starts rushing, no, Kane, get off, Kane! And I remember at the time, I thought it was so real. Oh, man, I was dumb. But, it's just...
It's not good, and the man deserved better, because, again, he can clearly play a horror villain.
I'll say it has a very unique kill in it, where he shoves a cell phone down a girl's throat.
Yep.
Did you know who that actress was?
Oh, I can't remember her name, but she would later go on to be on Jessica Jones.
Yep, she played Jessica Jones' best friend.
Yeah.
I'm glad to know she did better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the other movie,
the movie that we had both already seen is a full-on horror comedy called Santa's Sleigh,
starring Goldberg.
Yeah. And Sleigh spelled S-L-A-Y, and the plot of the movie is pretty clever. The movie's pretty good. I kind of like this movie. First of all, one thing that's funny is, what's the actor that plays Goldberg? What's his name?
Goldberg.
His name is good. The actor is
Bill Goldberg.
Bill
That's
Goldberg.
his
Okay,
legit name.
That's what I figured.
Went by Goldberg.
That's what I figured.
It's like Dave Bautista, Drax.
Yeah. I know Dave Bautista.
When he was wrestling, he just went by Bautista.
Gotcha. Okay, I was not familiar with Goldberg
Last
previously.
names are cool.
But it
unless if it's Lastly.
Yeah. But
or
this
quite frankly, I can't really say much. Maynard's kind of ruined thanks to fucking Wrong Turn. Fuck that franchise. Fuck you, Wrong Turn, for ruining my last name.
Oh man.
Where's my fucking whiskey?
Oh, that one is fun to edit. But the one thing that I think is funny is just how many people who were involved in the making of this movie were Jewish. Because obviously Goldberg, Jewish name, so I assume he's Jewish, but like there's a cameo from Fran Drescher in it. I think the director and writers are, anyway, I find that funny that this horror movie about Christmas was predominantly made by Jews.
And Goldberg is the killer Santa Claus. Now, before we talk more about the movie, Goldberg has a wrestler.
Yeah.
He is not at all a horror character.
No.
Per se. Bill Goldberg, the wrestling character, is a badass.
Yeah.
He comes in, he walks to the ring breathing the smoke from his pyro.
Yeah.
And he beats the shit out of someone within 2 minutes and wins the match. That spear, jackhammer, that's it.
Yeah.
So it's only fitting for him to be this hulking monster of a Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And yes, he does get to spear someone in the movie, and that made me jump for joy.
Yeah. But the plot of the movie is pretty clever. The idea is that Santa is a demon who thousands of years ago lost a bet with an angel, right?
Yes.
And so was sentenced to, for however many thousand years, to basically be a symbol of good and all this stuff. Well, now that the time is up, he's going to wreak havoc.
Look at all these ho-ho-hos.
Yeah, there's a strip club scene, Reese. But no, the movie I think is pretty funny, and again, the cast is surprising because you got the opening scene of the movie is just cameo city, including James Caan of all people.
That's right. I remember being very surprised by seeing James.
And then
Caan.
SNL's Chris Kattan is in it, but and then the town preacher, is played by Dave Thomas from SCTV, if you know who that is, or he and Rick Moranis were Doug and Bob McKenzie, who were these characters that eventually got their own movie called Strange Brew. But there are these two like Canadian drinking buddy characters.
Now, I will say, when I first saw this movie, I was really young.
Yeah.
And, I didn't necessarily think that horror and comedy should go together at that point in time. I have grown a lot since then.
Yeah.
But I remember when I first saw it, I was just, this movie's awful. It's not scary.
Yeah.
And the jokes are bad. The dialogue is bad. Goldberg sucks.
Yeah.
This is bad.
Yeah.
And while a lot of that is true, that's kind of the point.
Yeah, it's a very deliberate movie. Like it's the cheesiness of it is so on purpose.
And you're just supposed to be having fun with it rather than take it too seriously.
It is very purposefully dumb. In a very good way, I think. I think it's a lot of fun. The movie that you had actually not seen before, but that is one of my favorite horror movies.
Before we comment on that, I will say this about Santa's Sleigh. It at least looked like Goldberg was having fun.
It did.
Now, when Goldberg was wrestling,
Yeah.
he kind of had a reputation for taking himself too seriously.
Gotcha.
And he would make a big deal out of he had to be portrayed a certain way.
Yeah.
So he did Santa's Sleigh shortly after he retired the first time. Back in, I think this movie came out in 2005.
Something like that. Yeah, I believe so.
To see a more laid back, not being so serious Goldberg was very
refreshing.
Refreshing.
Yeah.
Refreshing to see.
Yeah.
In T-ways.
So the movie that you had surprisingly not seen, but is one of my favorite horror movies of all time, was John Carpenter's They Live. Which, one of the things I love about it is it's kind of got everything, because it's sci-fi, horror, action. Obviously, the movie is very, campy. But there's also some very smart and haunting commentary in it.
Roddy Piper should have held this at some point, by the way. Just saying. He should have been the champion.
But,
sorry, I'm a big...
No, of course.
Roddy Piper fan.
Of course. And Carpenter was, too. And he really wanted someone who you would never...
What year did this movie come out?
87 or 88.
So, 87 or 88, the first WrestleMania, I believe, happened in 1985.
Okay.
Roddy Piper was one of the biggest bad guys in the world.
100%.
Like, fans would try to literally kill him if they could, because that's how much of a good bad guy he was. So to see him play the lead role, and unlike the previous two films we talked about, he's the good guy.
Yeah.
He's the one who's trying to bring down the big evil.
Yeah. And
seeing that he could, be good at it.
Yeah.
Was amazing.
Yeah, and Carpenter wanted to make sure that the lead was someone you would never once mistake for a movie star. He wanted someone who was who just really looked like a working class guy. And so the plot involves Roddy Piper playing a guy whose name is Tom Nada. And because he's a nobody. and he's just kind of looking for work. It's the late '80s. Carpenter described the movie as his primal scream against Reaganomics, and it was basically trying to do for, you know, unfettered capitalism and trickle-down economics what Invasion of the Body Snatchers did for communism.
What's really scary about
Yeah.
this movie is how relevant it still is today. I mean, this movie came out
100%.
in, you said, 87 or 88.
Yeah.
It's 2022, and a lot of shit in that movie is still fucking
It's
real.
Haunting how real it is. And they managed to work in everything from trickle-down economics, just commercialism, putting all the focus on how much money you can have. They even work in climate change in there. But it's and class division and
He finds these sunglasses, and when he puts them on, he sees the world for how it really is.
and just it literally, the film becomes literally black and white.
It becomes black and white, and billboards start changing from like random advertisements to obey.
Do not question authority.
Do not question authority. You must consume.
Yeah, there's one it's this like tourism ad for the Caribbean. It's this sexy woman lying in the sand, and he puts on it says "marry and reproduce." Like it almost like it's just saying, you know, look at this and get horny. Like it's just everything is. And my favorite part of the whole movie is this moment. It's a brief moment that I thought was just such a gut punch. Where he's at this newsstand because he's just put these on. He's flipping through all the magazines, and they just, again, have all these what were, previously hidden messages. And he looks over at the guy who runs the newsstand because he says, hey, you're gonna sit here and read that, or you're gonna buy that. And he's holding some money, and the money, when he looks at it with the glasses on, it's a piece of paper that says, "This is your God." And to me, that was the most powerful moment in a movie like this, where when it's not, doing this biting commentary, it's not afraid to get silly.
The fight scene between him and Keith David goes on forever.
And it's over nothing. And
It really is.
And the thing is, what was great about it, and this was very intentional, and, again, what was great about having a wrestler in the movie was the fight isn't sensationalized at all. It's literally it just feels like two, big guys just having a fist fight. It's not like done in a montage, there's no slow-mo, there's not even any music. It's just two guys having a fist, it's just two brawlers beating the hell out of each other in an alley. Like, there's a realism to it that also gets funnier and funnier as it just keeps on going forever and ever.
And the longer it goes, the more ridiculous it gets.
Yeah,
which is just
it's almost
hilarious.
like the opening of Spaceballs with the ship, where it just goes on forever. Obviously Keith David is always great.
I thought the way he died in the movie was a total bitch move.
I guess, but whatever.
I love Keith David.
Oh, I do too. Who doesn't?
If you don't know who Keith David is, he voices the president in Rick and Morty.
Yes. I'm president of the United States, which basically means president of the world, but don't tell anyone I said that.
And if you watch horror movies, you'll know he's a child from John Carpenter's The Thing.
Right. And if you're a Disney fan, you would know him as Dr. Facilier from The Princess and the Frog. One of the best, relatively more recent Disney villains. And the man can sing. There's a, this is the movie where you get the iconic line, "I've come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass."
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Yeah, and Carpenter basically told Roddy, use quips you haven't used before. Like, use, you're a wrestler, man. Use lines. You've got, and so he...
And as a wrestling fan, I could definitely sense that throughout watching it. Even right before him and Keith David fight, he says, "I'm giving you a choice. Either put on these sunglasses or start eating that trash can."
Like, or just one of my favorite lines is one of the cops points a gun at him and says, "Where'd you get those sunglasses?" And he just goes, "Tooth Fairy." Like, I don't know why that one got me. but just the or when because part of it is he sees all these sort of elite, the societal elites, the basically the rich conservatives, or not even necessarily rich, but he puts them on, and they're all aliens. Turns out that they've infiltrated society and are terraforming the planet. Basically, it's just, no matter how much we say or spoil or whatever, watch the movie because it's so good.
This is the real look of the bad guys from They Live.
And he...
which, honestly, it would explain conservatives in a nutshell, because I question their humanity a lot.
That's kind of the idea. But it's...
this is what my cousin looks like.
Oh, yeah, that one. But it needs a cowboy hat, though.
Oh, I'm going to get in trouble for this one.
Suck it. One line that always gets me is when he puts on the glasses and he's like, sees this, this old lady in a fur coat and she's an alien. And he's looking back and forth at this other woman who's not an alien. And he's like,
yes.
And he says something to her like, you look like you fell in the cheese dip in 19... And he looks at the other person. You're okay. This one, real fucking ugly. See, it's these glasses. When I take them off, she looks completely normal. Put on the glasses, formaldehyde face. Like, it's... The quips in this movie are great. And it's just... The action is great. It's so much fun. And the first time you see one of the aliens, it is a genuine, like, oh, shit.
It definitely took me aback.
It is a jolt.
This one can see.
Yeah. The first time you have it's that same old lady that he's, being mean to. He just goes, I've got one that can see. That's another just, oh shit moment. But yeah, Carpenter's a big wrestling fan. He wanted to make a movie starring a wrestler, and it was such a perfect role for a wrestler who wanted to get into acting. Because it didn't require him to branch out too much. He kind of stayed in his lane and, and just fucking nailed it.
And again, and without spoiling too much of it, there's something so satisfying about seeing Roddy Piper give the finger to the man.
Yes. Absolutely.
Just Roddy Piper... Again, kind of like Kane and Goldberg for their movies, is the selling point.
He really is. But this movie has other selling points. Because, again, John Carpenter, Keith David.
Well, again, what I was going to say, with Santa Slay and See No Evil, the wrestlers were the only selling point.
Yeah.
And what sets They Live apart, like you just said, not only is the main selling point Roddy Piper, but you got John Carpenter to direct. You've got Keith David.
Yeah.
You have a good story.
Yeah. And you've got some very, unglossed commentary. It's not even trying to dress it up. It's like, no, fuck you guys.
You don't have to think too much about what they're trying to say. It is right there, and it's slapping you in the face.
Yes, but it is clever. It is doing it in a clever way. It's not
like the money being printed. This is your god.
Yeah,
literally made me gasp out loud.
Yeah, like that is my favorite part of the movie because I think the first time I saw it, I just went, "Damn," or something like that.
He said the quiet part loud.
Yeah, exactly. This is an entire movie of saying the quiet part out loud, and that's also great. You've also got in the supporting cast an actor named Buck Flower, who was the homeless man in Back to the Future, who plays the foreman, or not necessarily foreman, but one of the guys in this tent city. And you've also got an actor named Peter Jason, who is in a lot of Carpenter's films. But it's so much fun. And but the side characters are also very interesting and eccentric. You've got this blind preacher, who is like this sort of mystic sage. It's like he's, being apocalyptic, but not in a fire and brimstone way. It's in a, beware, they're trying to, they're trying to divide and conquer. It's not so much you're all going to hell, it's hell is here and we need to fight back.
But you know how many times I've heard some guy standing on the side of the road tell me or tell the world we're all going to hell?
Many.
Too many.
Oh yeah. And we live in the South, so I mean,
Ugh.
you don't even need to you don't even have to wait for it to be on a street corner. You get it just by getting a chicken sandwich. But
I see what you did there.
But
we're clever. We're funny.
We are. No, it's one of my favorite movies, and when I found out you hadn't seen it, I'm just like, oh man, you're gonna love this, especially as a wrestling fan.
Well, and honestly, the only reason why I hadn't seen it is because I just never had the opportunity to
see it. I didn't think you were avoiding it.
I've never seen it on a streaming service, and I've never seen it in a store, but I always knew that it was John Carpenter, Keith David, and the late great Roddy Piper.
Yeah.
And even before seeing the movie, I knew the line, I've come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, I'm all out of bubblegum.
That's kind of transcended that movie, because it's referenced in a lot of other stuff. Duke Nukem said it. Don't they reference it in DBZ Abridged?
I believe so. I'd have to...
Because I think, doesn't he accidentally say, I'm all out of ass?
I think so.
Or something. It is a brilliant movie, and where at times you could argue it's a little rough around the edges. I feel like it's all deliberate. I feel like it's a very scrappy movie, but it's in the hands of a master. I love hearing interviews with Carpenter talking about the conception of this movie.
I feel with this movie, if you take one thing out of it, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's
a perfect storm.
It's the right story being handled by the right guy. It has the right cast, and if you take anybody out, it's not the same, and it doesn't work.
It is lightning in a bottle.
It really is.
And again, it is a truly scathing critique of I guess more conservative economic policies, as well as just being, there's some stuff that's really truly just spooky. There's also there's some great action sequences. It's funny as hell. Right.
That's something that surprised me about this movie was the humor.
Yeah.
And how good the humor was.
Yeah.
Because I was expecting very cheesy kind of humor in an 80s horror flick.
Yeah, and some of it is, but even then, it's more the fact that it's cheesy is the humor.
It never feels like it's hitting you in the head over and over with constant dumb jokes.
It never feels like it's going, get it? Like it. It's...
if these aliens existed today, they would be orange, right? Just saying.
At the very least, have some orange around the mouth. But the I love this movie, and look up interviews with John Carpenter talking about it. Because his passion for the movie, when he's describing it and how he conceived it, and sort of his passion in its message is just so cool. But no, I love the movie, and I was so glad that you liked it, because I was like, I hope he doesn't think, I hope this doesn't ruin anything for him.
Honestly, even before watching it, I knew I would love it.
Yeah. And again, it is a role where it benefited immensely from having a wrestler. You buy him as this guy who just goes from construction site to construction site and is just a day laborer. And you also buy him as a guy who knows how to fight.
Honestly, I wish there was more wrestlers who would do more horror movies.
Yeah.
I mean, Bray Wyatt would be so great.
Yeah. Well, and I love the fact, because it's amazing how many wrestlers turn out to be genuinely great actors. Because, like, you've got guys like Roddy Piper or Dwayne
The Rock?
Yeah, or I was like Roddy Piper or
John Cena? I'll shut up.
You got guys like Roddy Piper or Dwayne Johnson who, you know, as long as they get to sort of almost play a version of themselves, awesome.
And that's what
So much
wrestlers-
fun. But, like, you also get guys like Dave Bautista, or especially if you see, like, the show Peacemaker, John Cena, who you go, these guys can act. Like, these guys can act. And it's so cool that, you know, that the world of wrestling bleeds into cinema so easily. And because it is all about performance. It is all very, you know, theatrical. And horror is very often theatrical. And so, you know, the two, you know, are very easily, you know, intertwined. Whether it's you're doing horror movie antics in wrestling, or you're, you know, using wrestling or wrestling, you know, gimmicks in horror movies.
You know, speaking of being theatrical, Bray Wyatt once wrestled John Cena
Yeah.
at WrestleMania. This was the first WrestleMania right after COVID hit.
Oh, okay,
So
yeah.
they did a cinematic style match
Gotcha.
called the, I think it was the Firefly Funhouse match.
Okay.
And it's basically Bray Wyatt is taking John Cena on a story arc of Cena's entire career, but he's fucking with him the entire time.
Okay. Oh, so it's almost like the Killing Joke.
Kind of.
Okay.
It's hard to describe. It's one of those things, as a horror fan, you just
Yeah.
have... I mean, as a wrestling fan, you have to watch it, but someone who
Yeah.
loves horror, I think you could respect what they were trying to do with
Right,
it.
right.
And it ends with... the match ends with Bray Wyatt about to finish off John Cena, and in the background, you hear John Cena's own words describing Bray Wyatt, and it's almost like he's using those words like, hey, right back at you. You just described yourself.
Yeah.
And Bray Wyatt also had another fun, like another cinematic match with Braun Strowman of all people.
Okay.
Where they end up fighting in a fucking swamp.
I love it.
And it ends with, you know, Braun Strowman thinks he's won, and then cue Friday the 13th, because out comes the motherfucking Fiend and drags Braun Strowman into the swamp, and the last thing you just see the camera kind of pan over the swamp, and then you just hear Bray Wyatt's laughter, and then cut.
I love it. I gotta watch that.
It's, as a horror fan, you would love it. For people who love like wrestling, I think they tolerate it because it was during the pandemic.
So it's like this is the best we can do.
Yeah, it's the best we can do. And honestly, I think it has a story-driven base. It's really good.
Yeah, it sounds great.
It is. So on that note, I could go on about this for hours. So on that note, that is just a little bit of wrestling in the world of horror.
Yeah.
So, Will, what is the topic of discussion for the next episode?
This is where we're going to get a little bit philosophical. We touched on this a little bit when we were talking about the movie The Devil's Carnival in our episode about horror musicals. We're going to talk about horror and religion. And the way that religion plays a part in horror. And how oddly frequent the two are sort of merged.
Get ready, because you know The Exorcism is going to be brought up.
Well, yeah. Get ready for The Exorcist, The Omen, Rosemary's Baby. Like, it's...
The Nun.
Right.
To a lesser extent.
Right. But it's, you know, Sister Act. Wait. But no, that's gonna be a fun one, and we're also gonna play a fun little game with that one to sort of end on a lighter note. We're going to play a little game that
Oh my God.
was introduced to us via Dead Meat on their podcast, in which we go to a very like strict fundamentalist Christian website that does movie reviews. And we read, and I'm going to read Alex some of their reviews, and he's going to try to guess what the movie is based on what their issues were with the movie.
This is going to be fun.
So we'll get real deep and philosophical, and then we'll end on something fun.
All right.
So let's.
That sounds good.
Yeah. So I think that'll be a really fun one to do.
Which, by the way, if you guys like seeing us kind of talk about more topics.
Yeah.
Like we have been over the last couple episodes, or if you want to see more rankings, by all means, let us know.
Yeah. If there's something you want us to discuss, whether it's a franchise or a topic, say something, man.
Except Wrong Turn, I'm done with it.
It's
done.
It's over, Alex. It's gonna be okay. The war's over now. You can rest. So yeah, with that said, I'm Will Lastly.
I'm Alex Maynard.
And until next time, be right back!